إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار والفلك التي تجري في البحر بما ينفع الناس. Now this is a very important ayah of the Quran, and this actually I have given it a name Ayatul Ayat, because this one ayah contains reference to so many physical phenomena. These physical phenomena which Quran declares as signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These skies, these heavens, this moon, this sun, the alternation of the day and night, creation of heavens and earth, and this rain, all that the greenery this earth gets after the rain, and so on. Everything, is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sign of His wisdom, sign of His authority, sign of His power. So actually all these things are signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we find in various Makki surahs, each one of these signs is discussed separately in ayat. But here in one ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gathered so many physical phenomena as His signs. So it is Ayatul Ayat, the one ayah which has comprised so many ayat and signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inna fi khalqis samawati wal ard. Surely in the creation of heavens and the earth, وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ, and the difference or alternation of the night and the day, وَالْفُلْكِ الَّتِي تَجْرِي فِي الْبَحْرِ بِمَا يَنْفَعُ النَّاسِ, and in the ships that float in the rivers and the sea with the material which is beneficial, بِمَا يَنْفَعُ النَّاسِ, which is beneficial for people. وَمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مِن مَّاءٍ, and in the water that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent down from the sky. فَأَحْيَا بِهِ الْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا, and revived the earth after it had died. It was dead, because when there is no greenery on the earth, it is like a dead earth. There is nothing, no signs of life. But when there is rain, there are all signs of life, there is greenery, and the insects also appear, birds also come. Life, in all the form now becomes very evident and apparent. فَأَحْيَا بِهِ الْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا, and He made, the earth again living after it had been dead. وَبَثَّ فِيهَا مِن كُلِّ دَابَّةٍ, and He has spread in it all the moving creatures, all the animals, all the things that He has created. وَالسَّحَابِ وَتَصْرِيفِ الرِّيَاحِ, and in the changing of the winds, direction of the wind is changing from this direction to that direction. وَالسَّحَابِ الْمُسَخَّرِ, and this cloud which is, subservient, and this is between بَيْنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ, this is floating between the earth and the sky. لَا آيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ, in each one of them there are signs for people who have understanding, who can infer from these, who can understand them. Every sign, is a clear proof of Allah's existence, of Allah being Almighty, of Allah being the all-knowing. All the attributes, great attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are manifest in these physical phenomena that every man can see with his own eyes. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَتَّخِذُ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَنْدَادًا يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ, and there are among the people who accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala other things and make them rivals to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they become loving them with the love which was due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a philosophical ayah of the Quran. Because, and let me mention here, Dr. Rafiuddin, he's a very big scholar, and he explained the philosophy of self of Allama Iqbal in a very philosophical book of his, and that is the ideology of the future. The main theme of the philosophy is that in man there is an urge for love. He wants to love someone, something, some idea, some ideology. This is the basic urge in every human being. So much so that for this love of his, he can sacrifice, and he is ready to sacrifice even his life. Because the modern psychologists, they tell us that the most potent instincts in man are the preservation of the self and the preservation of the species. You want to live. You want to save yourself. This is the most potent instinct in every living being. But in men we find, men have sacrificed their lives for ideologies. How many people laid down their lives for the communist revolution in Russia? How many people sacrificed their lives at the command of Hirohito, the king of Japan? They committed harakiri. They committed suicide at the command of the emperor. At the command, because they thought that our emperor is a god also, a manifestation of God, God incarnate. So out of love for him, they committed harakiri, and that was a special form of suicide. They used to cut their own abdomen with their own hands, with a knife, starting from the lower part of the abdomen till the chest. The whole person doing it himself, killing himself. So actually, he has decided, he has inferred, and is proved that the most basic instinct in human beings is, which differentiates them from all animals, because the most potent animal instinct is to preserve it himself. But here we find that man sacrifices his own life, not only his own life, his progeny, for the sake of some idea, ideology, some philosophy, some people for their nation, some people for their country, some people for their honor, some people for some ideology, from communism and so on. It means there is an inherent urge to love something in every human being. This inherent urge of love was basically produced in us for the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But people who don't reach that place, who can't comprehend Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who have not recognized, who didn't have the marfa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now they place somebody else, something else in his place, and they start loving him or that idea with the intensity with which they should have loved Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is the basic reason of shirk. Sometimes it is the country, my country. I am sacrificing my life for my country, my nation. I am sacrificing. I have dedicated myself to my nation, my religion, my philosophy, my ideology, my revolution. So actually all this was to be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but people out of ignorance, when they couldn't reach the concept and the marfa, the understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they place something else at that place. Because if you are very hungry, you eat everything then. Even haram can be eaten at that time. Even the dead flesh, the flesh of a dead animal can be eaten. Because the urge to eat is so strong in you that if the good food is not available, you are eating the very foul food. In the same way, if this urge of love, it is not attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will somehow attach with something else. And that thing will become your God now. Either it is watan, or it is qawm, nation, or country, or some idea, or some ideology. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَتَّخِذُ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ أَنْدَادًا يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ. There are from among people who take or make something rival to Allah, and they start loving them, loving that thing, or loving those things, just as they should have loved Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. And those who have real faith, who have reached the iman, who have reached the gnosis of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who have got the marfa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more than anything. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. Now this is the essence of iman, and this is the criterion on which we can assess ourselves. Is Allah more dear to us than our own lives? Is Allah more dear to us than our sons and daughters and parents or our wives? Is Allah more dear to us than all the wealth of the world? If the answer is yes, Allah is more dear to me than anything else, then it is iman. Thank God that you have the iman. And if anything is there which is more dear to you than Allah, then that is your God, not Allah. If you love wealth more than Allah, then Allah is then the wealth is your God, not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is why the Prophet said, Ta'isa abdul dinar wa abdul dirham. Woe to the bondsman of dirham and dinar. Because whosoever loves, this wealth, dollar, more than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Dollar should come, money should come, rupee should come. Whether it is coming from halal or haram, I don't care. It means it is more beloved to you. It's more dear to you than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you may be having the name of Abdul Rahman, but actually you are Abdul Dinar, you are Abdul Dirham. Ta'is Abdul Dinar wa Abdul Dirham. Woe to the Abdul Dinar and Abdul Dirham, a man who is a bondsman to Dinar and Dirham. So whosoever is most loved by you, he is actually your Lord, he is actually your God, and you are worshipping him. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. And those who have real iman, they love Allah more than anything else. Let me quote here the ayah number 24 of Surah Al-Tawbah. قُلْ إِنْ كَانَ آبَاؤُكُمْ وَأَبْنَاؤُكُمْ وَإِخْوَانُكُمْ وَأَزْوَاجُكُمْ وَعَشِيرَتُكُمْ وَأَمْوَالٌ اقْتَرَفْتُمُوهَا وَتِجَارَةٌ تَخْشَوْنَ كَسَادَهَا وَمَسَاكِنُ تَرْضَوْنَهَا أَحَبَّ إِلَيْكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ وَجِهَادٍ فِي سَبِيلِهِ فَتَرَبَّصُوا حَتَّى يَأْتِيَ اللَّهُ بِأَمْرِهِ وَاللَّهُ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Say to them, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, if your fathers and your brothers and your sons and your wives or spouses or your relatives and the wealth that you have gathered and the business about whose you are always fearing about some recession, and of the big buildings that you have built which you very much like, if all these eight things are more dear to you than Allah and His Messenger and going to jihad for the cause of Allah, then go and wait till Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares His final judgment, and Allah is not going to guide such rebellious type of people. Now this is actually the criterion of Iman. So وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ وَلَوْ يَرَى الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا يَرَوْنَ الْعَذَابَ أَنَّ الْقُوَّةَ لِلَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ شَدِيدُ الْعَذَابِ. And only if these people who had committed sins, who have been unjust, who have done shirk, because this is the description of shirk, if they could see the azab, is yarawna al-azab, if they could see the moment, if they could visualize the time when they will see the azab and the punishment and the chastisement, and they will clearly understand at that time anna al-quwwata lillahi jami'a, that all authority is with Allah, wa anna Allah shadidul azab, and that Allah is very severe in punishment. These realities will dawn on them at that time. Only if it could dawn on them at this time, this would have been beneficial for them. إِسْتَبَرَّ الَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوا مِنَ الَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوا. When those who were followed, the leaders, the general public was following them. They may be religious leaders, they may be the political leaders who have given slogans to the public at large. When those people who were followed, they will disown them who were following them. وَرَاوُ الْعَذَابِ. And when they will see before their eyes the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the fire of hell, وَتَقَطَّعَتْ بِهِمُ الْأَسْبَابِ. And all the relations between them will all be broken and cut. وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوا. And at that time, those people who were followers, who were following the leaders, the religious or the political leaders, they will say, لَوْ أَنَّ لَنَا كَرَّةً. If there can be a returning for us to the world, the worldly life again, لَتَبَرَّأَ مِنْهُمْ كَمَا تَبَرَّأُوا مِنَّا. We will also sever all relations from them. We will disown our leaders, the religious as well as the political leaders, as they have disowned us today. كَذَلِكَ يُرِيهِمُ اللَّهُ أَعْمَالَهُمْ حَسَرَاتٍ عَلَيْهِمْ. In this manner, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show them all their deeds that they had done or committed in this world as regrets for them. Now they will be regretting. We followed them and they took us astray. We believed in them and they, just took us away from the right path. But this will be regret only. There is no second returning to this world. This life is for once, and now the hereafter will be eternal. The result that will going to last forever. وَمَا هُمْ بِخَارِجِينَ مِنَ النَّارِ. And they will not be able to come out of the fire. بارك الله لي ولكم في القرآن العظيم ونفعني وإياكم بالآيات والذكر الحكيم.